Got a good guest on hand coming up next right now to talk about San Diego FC. He is a contributing writer for Black Players for Change in Major League Soccer and a former USA Today Network MLS reporter. Covered the league and the United States men's national team since 2019. He's covered two MLS expansion teams, FC Cincinnati in 2018 and Nashville SC from 2019 to 2023. Co-led USA Today's men's national team coverage during the 2022 World Cup qualifying cycle on American soil and abroad in Mexico. He also spent some time filling in on some radio stations as well to talk about soccer, contributing writer for Black Players for Change, and San Diego boy. Drake Hills joins us on the Braden Surprenant Show. Drake, always love talking with another San Diegan and a fellow Don. What's going on, Drake?
Man, times have changed, haven't they, Braden? Looking at, I'm thinking going back to those Cathedral days. I remember when the U.S. men's national team was playing at the Q. Particularly, I remember they played Guatemala at the Q right before they went to the 2014 World Cup, which they did pretty well at. But yeah, times have changed, man. Major League Soccer in San Diego.
Yeah, obviously, as a couple of kids growing up in San Diego, to get another major league franchise is great. As for you that, always loved soccer for a long period of time and now have done so many great things in covering this particular sport, and especially here in the United States, what did it mean to you to have Major League Soccer here in San Diego as somebody that has always been an advocate for the sport in the United States?
Yeah, you know what? It put everything into perspective, what I've been working for over the past, 6 to 10 years, if you will. I'm thinking about, how I wanted to ascend into a career of journalism and being able to tell stories, as you mentioned, telling stories about Black Players for Change. Obviously, the intersection of, my own culture as well as the sport, and be able to tie San Diego into that is amazing. And especially, seeing, them playing and having guys that you've played against coming up, that they're now either working for the team or they're big fans of the team. And it means a lot. I mean, being from San Diego, we've had a unique sports history. And so to put San Diego FC into that footprint, I'm sure, you and I are excited, but I know a lot of folks are excited just as we saw a couple of weeks ago for the home opener.
Drake Hill's joining us on the Braden Surprenant Show and talking some San Diego FC. So, Drake, you've been able to cover a handful of teams in their inaugural years. What have you seen so far out of San Diego FC? They're off to a great start. They knocked off the reigning champion Galaxy in their first game, had a good draw at home a couple of weeks ago, but then a big win on the road. Always great to get 3 points on the road. What is your initial thoughts on the way that San Diego FC has started their season?
No, Braden, I have seen rarely over the past, let's just call it 5 years, right? Since we really got a chance to see an FC Cincinnati come into their own after a couple of years where they were bottom of the league, and then of course Nashville FC, they had an incredible start, a historical start. Obviously, being able to get into the playoffs and go and make deep playoff runs 4 years straight. I mean, this is a different kind of soccer though that I saw from those two teams, with Mikey Varas and knowing how he wants to play, how San Diego FC wants to line up. They want to possess the ball. They want to attack. As you saw against Real Salt Lake last week, even after they got back the equalizer with Franco Negri, that they were pressing on. Playing at Real Salt Lake in altitude, that's a hard thing to do. And you have a lot of players. This is still an expansion team. So you have a lot of players who aren't used to playing in Major League Soccer, aren't used to time differences, aren't used to playing in significantly cold weather. So be able to withstand all those elements and still be able to go out and attack and be able to get a 3-1 result on the road. That's different. You don't normally see that from MLS teams. And a guy like Anders Dreyer, this guy is, he's only 26, right? He still has a lot of soccer in him. But at the same time, he is a bona fide professional. He's won trophies in Belgium. He's won trophies, and he scored a lot of goals in Denmark, in his home country. Lo and behold, this guy is, in 3 games, he's got a bunch of goals already. So a lot of times you'll see from expansion teams, they're missing that piece. They're missing that goal scorer, particularly in a center forward or some sort of second striker or winger. And they have that winger in Anders Dreyer. So as far as play style is concerned, as far as being able to appeal to to be entertaining to the average fan. I mean, this team is different than what I'm used to.
Well, Drake, I'm glad that you brought up their style of play, because that was kind of be my next question. Mikey Vars in his introductory press conference talked about this up tempo, style of play that they're going to play. They were going to be aggressive, and a lot of teams in soccer, when they get that equalizer or even the go ahead goal late in the game, they kind of settle down in when it comes to stoppage time, and they'll take the points, but they continue to push. Obviously, it sets yourself up when you put your back line advanced a little bit further. You saw that against Real Salt Lake, where they got through the back line a couple of times. But, for a lot of people here in San Diego that are learning the game and want to get involved with San Diego FC and get into soccer because it's the new major league sport in town, that are used to other sports, right? Like football and basketball and everything like that. How would you describe that style of play that San Diego FC brings? Obviously, it's been very exciting so far, but kind of the aggressiveness on offense, but then what they give up on defense, having to run this type of play.
It's a risk, right? I mean, it's a risk. And I remember, you were back on the airwaves last week talking about just the uniqueness of trying to understand, wrap your head around earning a point when you tie at the end of a game. That's crazy to some folks, especially, they're used to, Padres going, 10, 11, 12 innings to get a winner. It's different in soccer, right? And like you said, I mean, in the game of soccer, not just Major League Soccer, but this is something that happens across the globe, is teams will sit back, especially if you're on the road. They'll put 5, sometimes drop even 6 players, sometimes drop the entire team behind the ball, especially once you get later into the game. But the risk here is honestly a compliment to San Diego FC. This is a team that, as I said, I mean, these guys have only been in camp or been together for 2 months, right? And that's not a lot of time to build chemistry, to understand, how the guy next to you likes to play. I mean, just thinking back to that Real Salt Lake game, the only player that stayed that played the full 90 was Chris McVeigh. All 3 other defenders, including Franco Negri, who scored the first goal, they got subbed out. So the chemistry is something that you can think about and say, wow. I mean, this is something that you're bringing in a rookie that you were drafted 24th overall, coming out of UNC Charlotte. His name is Ian Pilcher. He'll be 22 in a couple of weeks, but he's a young guy, and to be able to put him in that position on the road, I think there's a lot of individual talent and a lot to be excited for. For fans, is to know that this team is still coming to its own. Yet it's probably even going to go up from here, and be able to see some entertaining soccer. And it's going to be up against some pretty good teams as well. You've got, obviously, Columbus won MLS Cup 2 years ago. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about Columbus later, but also Austin FC, LAFC. That'll be an interesting, we'll see if it becomes a rivalry. It's not yet a rivalry yet. And then you've got Seattle, who's always going to be tough. So fans are going to get a chance to see some of the best quality come into Snapdragon and see how San Diego matches up.
Drake Hill's contributing writer to Black Players for Change in Major League Soccer. He's done covered MLS for now a long time, and has given us a great insight into San Diego FC. He's trying to grow the game here in San Diego from the professional standpoint, because obviously is a hotbed for soccer. Let's talk about the Columbus Crew and some things that San Diego FC has to deal with tomorrow. Obviously, a great start for San Diego FC. You mentioned Columbus Crew won the Cup a couple of years ago. Off to a pretty good start themselves out on the east side of things in MLS. But for all the fans that are going to go to the game tomorrow, expected another large crowd at Snapdragon Stadium. What should they expect out of the Columbus Crew?
Yeah, Columbus is a team that slightly mimics this attacking style that we've been talking about. Wilfred Nancy won the MLS Coach of the Year in that same year that they won MLS Cup. He was the first Black coach to win an MLS Cup, and that's something that it's not just for news clicks. I mean, this guy, he was under Thierry Henry in Montreal. He knows the game. He's also known for having quite the list of attacking players. Obviously, someone like Diego Rossi, who used to play for LAFC, was a very talented attacking midfielder and forward, guy who can create a lot of goals. This team is quite attacking that way, but also they play with three center backs. They play with three central defenders. And sometimes, especially if they want to go super defensive, they'll drop back two more. So you having to attack against the defense, that's five guys full and then a goalkeeper. That's pretty difficult. So you might see a little chess being played on Saturday. But I think fans should be thinking about how can SDFC line up against this team. And it's not the same team that, although they've been doing well, they're third in the East right now, but Columbus is not that same team player for player that they won MLS Cup with. Guys like Cucho Hernandez, who was sold and now plays for Real Betis in Spain, plays in La Liga. Same thing with Julian Gressel, plays in Inter Miami with Lionel Messi, or Christian Ramirez, who's now LA Galaxy, which is just up the road from here. So a lot of those attacking players, midfield players, those guys have gone, and they're bringing new guys into the fold. But I think with SDFC, you have the momentum of not only getting a road win against a pretty stubborn Real Salt Lake team, but obviously you're able to get a tough draw against a St. Louis City team who dropped back pretty much their entire team to defend. So that will not be the case. I think there's going to be a lot more entertaining soccer. Both teams who want to attack, both teams who want to get players forward. So I think fans are going to be seeing a whole lot of chances, a lot more chances that they saw than a couple weeks ago.
Oh, should be an exciting match tomorrow. Tomorrow night at 7:30 for San Diego FC and the Columbus Crew. Obviously, early on, and not a lot of growing MLS fans here in San Diego trying to learn the sport, trying to be engaged with the sport. A lot of baseball fans here in San Diego, football fans that are held over from the Chargers days and everything like that. This city just as well as I do. A lot of people are going to get super excited about the start and be like, oh, playoffs are bust, even though it's an expansion team. Give me some reasons why this team will make the playoffs. And then on the other side, a couple of reasons of why maybe we should just kind of relax and let the season play out and not get ahead of our skis here.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the first half. Although Chucky Lozano, he's still out, so I'll start with that and just clarify for fans that he's still week to week, but he will not play against Columbus Crew. Obviously, Chucky Lozano, the very talented designated player, basically one of the top players, if not the best player on this team. Mexican national team talisman, obviously has experience playing in Europe. He will not play in this game with that hamstring injury. But, the fact that Chucky Lozano has been able to pair well with Anders Dreyer, who we mentioned earlier, but also Marcus Ikvardsson, who scored last week. The case for San Diego FC making the playoffs in year one is the fact that their front three, their attacking players, their goal scorers are actually scoring early. And, sure, you could say, Chucky, he hasn't been the leading scorer. Anders has, but at the same time, he's been creating in that first game up in LA. He was the one who was creating those goals. He was the one who's creating those chances. Of course, Anders as well as we mentioned, has been on a tear to start the season. And then of course, Marcus getting his first goal. The case is that their goal scorers are scoring on an expansion team. I'm going to keep hitting that over the head because that is not normal. I think going back to LAFC in 2018, LAFC was kind of known as like the best start as far as an expansion team is concerned, going 6-2-2 in their first two games. Keep in mind, SDFC, I know it's only been 3 games, but they haven't lost yet. And so being unbeaten, that's still something to salute at, right? But I think on the other hand, to your point, the other half of your question, why fans should probably maybe relax and see how things go is that there's a lot of, I guess you could say, bumps and bruises that a team will take over the course of a season. You got to keep in mind, kind of like the dog days of summer in baseball, right? August hits and, guys are dinged up. People are starting to smell the playoffs and wanting to get some playoff baseball in them. It's a little bit similar in Major League Soccer where you've got mid-season, midsummer tournaments, international duty players going to play for their national teams. Obviously, I don't think Braden and I, we haven't talked about the Leagues Cup yet when Major League Soccer teams play Liga MX teams from Mexico. So that's going to happen. And then, of course, it's just a natural 34-game season that always has its runs, always has its momentum shifts. So there's a lot to be said about SDFC, but also a lot to be said about this season, about the entire league. So I think we shouldn't even have or even think about having a playoff conversation until we reach that August or September.
Drake, I appreciate the time as always. Let's do this again and get you recurring on the show. Love talking soccer with you and filling us in as we try to, obviously embrace the new major league team here and try to get a lot of people to be able to relate to it. But Drake, for people that don't know who you're at, who you are, let us know how we can follow you on social media and see some of your work.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, Drake Hill Soccer on Instagram. That's where I put a lot of my coverage, Black Players for Change coverage. Obviously, if I'm doing other things regarding MLS, definitely tap in on there. I haven't hit the Blue Sky thing yet, but I'm still on Twitter. Live Life Drake on Twitter. And then, of course, if you're around a San Diego FC game and you see me, say what up. But I'm excited to see what this team is going to do. I mean, still unbeaten in the season. They've got a lot of talented players. And a lot of talented and entertaining soccer to watch. So let's see.
Drake, appreciate it, man. Have a good rest of your day and have a good weekend.
I appreciate it. Congrats on the show, man. We'll talk soon.
All right. Drake Hill is joining us on the Braden Surprenant